Okay, let's dive right into this. We're talking about a hypothetical, but honestly, a chillingly plausible scenario set in 2026. Picture this, a massive standoff between the United States and Europe that's pushing the entire Western alliance right to the edge. It's a story about tariffs, territory, and ultimately economic weapons of last resort.
So how does this whole extraordinary crisis kick off? Well, it's not with some formal diplomatic cable or a stuffy negotiation. Nope, it all starts with this letter. Not a request, mind you, but a demand. Sent to the Norwegian Prime Minister, it instantly transforms what was a tense relationship into a full-blown, unprecedented crisis.
Now you might be asking, how on earth did we get to this point? Well, to understand that, you got to look back at the first year of this hypothetical second Trump term. Europe's strategy was pretty clear. Just try to manage the aggression. From getting hit with massive tariffs to the UK rolling out the red carpet with a full-blown royal welcome, the continent's leaders basically bet the farm that appeasement was the only way to avoid the worst-case scenario.
But that strategy, it didn't just fail. It backfired spectacularly. It led to a moment of profound public humiliation for Europe, and it all went down on a Scottish golf course in July of 2025. Just look at this, the so-called Turnberry Agreement. The imbalance is just wild. After a negotiation that reportedly lasted only 40 minutes, the European Union agreed to accept a 15% US tariff on all its goods. And what did the EU impose in return? Absolutely nothing. A big fat zero.
And this quote from the EU's top official, wow, it really says it all, doesn't it? You can almost hear the resignation in her voice. The sense of capitulation was just so clear, and it infuriated a lot of people across the EU, especially in France. They argued that this kind of weakness would only invite more aggression.
And you know what? The critics were right. Emboldened by this incredibly easy win on trade, the scenario escalates dramatically. This is where things go from a nasty trade dispute to something else entirely, an audacious, almost unbelievable demand for territory.
Now this demand for Greenland, which, by the way, is a territory of Denmark, it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. No, this is a massive strategic prize. You've got its dominant location in the Arctic, a literal treasure trove of rare earth minerals, and enormous untapped energy reserves. And the official justification? That the US had to grab it to protect it before Russia or China could.
And this is where you really start to see Europe crack. A deep fracture opens up. On one side, you still have countries arguing for appeasement, terrified of provoking the US even more. But on the other side, led by France, you have a growing group saying, look, the only language this administration understands is strength. The only way forward is to push back.
The breaking point finally comes in January 2026. Trump hits Europe with even more tariffs. And in response, France starts pushing the EU to stop making empty threats and to finally unleash its most powerful and up until now completely untouched economic weapons.
So first up in this arsenal is a tool nicknamed the Bazooka. Its official name is the Anti-Coercion Instrument. It was actually created back in 2023 with China in mind. And it's this incredibly powerful defensive weapon that's just been sitting there, but it has never, ever been fired.
So how does this thing actually work? Well, first, the entire EU has to unanimously agree that it's being economically bullied. Once that happens, boom, the EU can act as one giant, unified bloc. It can slap on massive tariffs, it can restrict investment from US tech giants, and it can even ban American companies from winning any public contracts anywhere on the continent. It's basically a tool designed to cut a country off from one of the richest markets on the planet.
But believe it or not, as devastating as the bazooka could be, it isn't even the biggest weapon in Europe's arsenal. There's something else on the table, something far more extreme, that analysts have started calling the economic nuclear option. Take a good long look at this number. $8 trillion. That is the value of US stocks and government bonds held directly by European countries. I mean, just to put that into perspective for you, it is nearly double what the rest of the world owns, combined. But wait, it gets even bigger. That $8 trillion figure doesn't even capture the whole picture. When you throw in the financial funds that operate in Europe, the number swells to over $12 trillion. The financial leverage here is just immense. It makes Europe the single biggest foreign creditor to the United States, period.
And this question from a Deutsche Bank analyst really just boils it all down to one crucial point. What happens if Europe decides it's just not willing to bankroll an America that's treating it like an adversary anymore? What happens if it decides to simply pull its money out, which could trigger a catastrophic financial crisis in the US?
So all of this leads to a final brutal choice for Europe. And what's so fascinating here is that it's not a crisis of power. They have the power. It's a crisis of political will. Courage or cowardice?
And as commentators like Gideon Rachman of the Financial Times have argued, the evidence from this hypothetical past year seems crystal clear. Appeasement didn't work. In fact, it just made things worse. The thinking is that Trump has consistently backed down in the past, but only when he's been faced with credible, serious resistance.
And this is the dilemma at the very heart of it all. Europe has the economic firepower to inflict severe, maybe even crippling pain on the United States, but using that power is a massive double-edged sword. It would almost certainly kick off a global crisis that would cause immense harm to Europe as well. So it comes down to this: the known, proven danger of just giving in versus the terrifying, unknown risks of actually fighting back.
And just when you think it can't get any more complicated, there's one last twist. As Europe and the United States are standing on the precipice of a potential economic war, another global power is watching all of this with great interest. The Kremlin is reportedly encouraging this very conflict. And the question we're all left with is why?